Today we're looking at control of blood glucose concentration from GCSE Biology Paper 2 for combined and triple science. And as always, we'll have a look at the question first, and then we'll break down the mark scheme and build a full marks answer while seeing exactly where marks are usually lost on this question. So let's have a look at the question. A person who does not have diabetes eats a large meal containing carbohydrates. Explain how their body maintains a constant blood glucose concentration. And this is for 6 marks. If you'd like to give this question a go and see how many marks you can get before we look at the mark scheme and build a full marks answer, you can pause the video now. And if there's a topic that you're worried about losing marks on, let me know in the comments so that I can cover it in a future video. Okay, so let's have a look at our mark scheme, and this is an absolute unit of a 6-mark question because they are not giving us very much information whatsoever to actually build our answer from. This is a really hard question in terms of it is just relying on you and your knowledge of blood glucose concentration to answer it. So it is a particularly tricky one just because it is so much information to cover. And again, it's an explain question, so we need to say exactly what is happening, but also say why it's happening. And the nice thing with this particular question is when we start going through this mark scheme is that it does follow a really nice structure. So it means that we can just use our actual question and what is happening at the start of the question to inform our answers and to help us to build a full marks answer from literally just from the starting point of a large meal containing carbohydrates. So it is quite a nice one to do. So before we get onto this, we'll just have a look at what is going on in our mark scheme. So we're saying about blood glucose concentration increasing and the pancreas releasing insulin for a mark. We need to say about insulin causing the glucose to move from the blood into the body cells. We need to say that in the liver, your excess glucose is converted into glycogen. When blood glucose decreases, the pancreas releases glucagon. Glucagon causes glycogen to be converted into glucose, and then glucose is released into the blood, causing blood glucose concentration to increase/return to normal. So there is a lot of information in there, but we can break this down and use it to inform our answer, to come up with a really good structured answer. So, onto the question. Let's have a look. Where could we possibly start when we are making an answer for this question? Because we've got a lot of space in here and we've got a lot of stuff to cover. So what is it? Where is the start point? And it is this bit. They're eating a large meal containing carbohydrates, and it is specifically a person, it's highlighted. So they are making a really big point of it. Highlighted or emboldened words, usually very, very important in the actual answer that you need to write down. So this person that doesn't have diabetes, so a non-diabetes person, eats a large meal containing carbohydrates. And we know that carbohydrates, it's linked to sugars. Sugars and diabetes, we're going to have some kind of blood glucose response. So explain how the body maintains a constant blood glucose concentration. That is what we need to do. So I am going to start with I'm thinking of this like a journey. What is happening from the start to the finish? So the person is eating a large meal containing carbohydrates. So I'm probably going to start to build my answer from that point because it just makes the whole thing a little bit easier to flow through. I'm going to do bullet points for this one just so that we can establish all of these different points as we're working through it, because it'll give us that sort of journey through the answer. So the person ingests carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are going in, they're going to be broken down into glucose. So I'm just going to say the person ingests carbohydrates and digests them, because then we are inferring that it's being broken down and enters the bloodstream. So this isn't getting me any marks, but it's helping me to answer. This is like it's a thing that I would probably just like to point out with it, I guess. So even though I'm writing something that isn't actually getting me any marks, it's really helping me to sort of establish this journey as we go through this process to make sure that we get all of the rest of the marks. So we're not just sort of starting halfway through. We're just saying from one sentence what is happening at the start. So the person's ingesting the carbs and then they're digesting them. At that point, it's going to go into the bloodstream. So from that, this causes... this causes an increase in blood glucose concentration. So ingested carbs goes into the blood. The glucose causes an increase in blood glucose concentration. And this is the point. So this causes, so there's going to be a lot of this causes in this answer because we're doing a chain. We're doing a chain of events. This causes the pancreas to release insulin. You could also start mentioning blood glucose concentrations here in micromoles per decimeter cube, but you don't have to. It's not in there. It is actually in sort of the extra information that it's allowed. If you was to say maybe if the blood glucose goes up to 7.5 micromoles per decimeter cube, then the pancreas releases insulin. So it's just, they will sometimes have extra mark points in there to say, if you didn't say exactly this, this is also okay. So yeah, we're just going through. So process. So blood glucose concentration's gone up. The pancreas starts to release insulin. So now we are moving on to what does this cause? And this is why I was saying to start at the beginning. So every time I'm writing a sentence, my next question is, so what does that mean? What does that do? What is the reason, or what does that cause? Something along those lines. So just to use these first 3 points here. So person's ingested carbohydrates and digested them. What's that going to do? It's going to cause an increase in the blood glucose concentration. So what's that going to do? It's going to cause the pancreas to release insulin. So what's the insulin going to do? You can see where I'm going here. It's building this sort of step-by-step process that just from having this bit of information at the start, we can start going through and making up this big, longer answer to get all 6 marks. So the insulin is being released. So this causes, you see, there's going to be a lot of this causes because of the way that I'm doing the answer of having this chain of events. This causes glucose to move, and I can just use these from the mark scheme actually because it's covering all points. So this causes glucose to move from the blood into muscle cells. That's the first place that my brain goes, because that's effectively what's happening. So the glucose moves from the blood into the muscle cells. So we've got our high blood glucose concentration. We've released our insulin, and now that glucose has moved into the muscle cells. So what does that cause? In the liver, I'm literally just going to put in this mark point. So in the liver, excess glucose is converted into glycogen. Yeah, there we go. So excess glucose is converted into glycogen. So now we've said what is happening. We're kind of like halfway through, aren't we? So we've described our drop in blood glucose concentration from the sort of the high spike at the beginning. So if I was to like plot it, we'd be thinking about this person's ingested carbs, it's going all the way up, the insulin gets released, and it's going to go all the way down, but we've still got our sort of base level there. So you need to put the brakes on at some point so that we can come back up again. So effectively, we are here at this point with our answer. So we still need to talk about this other bit. This is where we're getting sort of the rest of our marks, because this is a natural place where a lot of students would stop answering this question, because they've said that the blood glucose has gone up and the insulin's caused it to come back down, and they've said exactly where the glucose has gone and about being converted into glycogen, but then they haven't described the rest of the process. So they'll still get maybe 3-4 marks at this point, but not getting full marks, and we want all 6. So we've got our glucose. It's been pushed into your blood, into your muscle cells. It's been converted into glycogen. So what happens next? So that is where we're at here. So we can see when we're going beyond our baseline, our normal level, it's still going down. So when blood glucose, I'll shorten this so I'm not having to write it all out and dragging the time out a bit. So when I'm just going to say blood glucose and leave out the concentration for now, decreases. And this is, again, I could say specific values here. If I wanted to say it decreases down to 4 micromoles per decimeter cubed, I could put that in, but I don't have to, so I'm not going to at this point. But if that's how you helps you to remember different levels, I know some people have different ways of remembering those, so that's absolutely fine if you want to include it. But when blood glucose decreases, the pancreas, we'll say decreases below, we'll say below normal, because we're talking about homeostasis, and it's the sort of maintenance of normal levels of everything. So when blood glucose decreases below normal levels, I could say about it being due to the insulin, but I'm just going to keep it a bit shorter. So when blood glucose decreases below normal levels, we're saying what happens? Is the pancreas getting involved again? And the pancreas releases glucagon. There we go, releases glucagon. So what does that cause? You see where we're going. What does that cause? The pancreas is releasing glucagon, and that is effectively doing, for this purpose, the opposite of insulin. So this causes glycogen to be converted into glucose. So we're very much at the end now. So we've reached this point on our graph right at the bottom of this curve. Our glucagon is being released. Our glycogen is being converted back into glucose. So now we just need to say, what does that cause? Because then effectively we've done a full cycle. We've gone all the way up, we've come all the way down to the bottom, and now we're on the way back up again to normal. So we are going to say what the glycogen being converted into glucose actually does. So this causes the glucose to be released back into the blood, causing, there's a lot of causings in this question, causing blood glucose concentrations, oh, not plural, blood glucose concentration to return to normal. And we've done it. Full marks, bang. There we go. Right, so we have covered every single point on our mark scheme, and just like I was saying earlier on, we have done it in sort of a journey there. So person's eating the carbohydrates and digesting them, that is going to cause the blood glucose concentration to go up. That's going to make the pancreas release insulin. The insulin is going to make the glucose move back into the from the blood into the muscle cells. The excess that's left over is going to be converted into glycogen. Then when blood glucose decreases below that normal level, so down below the normal level, your pancreas then releases the glucagon. That causes the glycogen to be converted into glucose. That causes glucose to be released back into your blood, and that brings your blood glucose concentration back up to the normal level. And it's going to keep going and going and going. It's going to keep going up a bit. You're going to release a tiny bit of insulin, and then you're going to go back down under again. And this is where you start getting into your sort of negative feedback and this irregular sort of line where maybe you'll eat the sugar and it'll go all the way up here. You'll release more insulin to bring it back down. And this bigger amount of insulin is going to cause it to go further down. But then your glucagon is going to cause it to come back up again. And then you're going to go back into your baselines. So there it is, full marks. And from such a small amount of information, we have used this sort of idea of just following a journey of this carbohydrate being ingested, so the glucose coming in, and what that causes on its route into your blood and then into your cells and then back out again. Hopefully that made the structure of the answer a little bit clearer, and it showed you exactly what the examiner is looking for in this question. And if the video helped, do give it a like, because it really helps the channel to reach more students that are revising for their exams. And if you know someone who needs help with this topic or this question, feel free to share the video with them. Check out these other GCSE science walkthroughs that are on screen now. Thanks for watching, and good luck.